We're hosting tonight's webinar from the Astronomical Society of the Pacific in San Francisco, California. And for the first time in a long time, I'm actually sitting in our webinar studio at the ASP headquarters. So that's kind of a remarkable thing. We're very excited to present this webinar with our guest speakers, Dr. Denise Smith and Holly Ryer from the Space Telescope Science Institute. Welcome to everyone joining us on the YouTube live stream. We're very happy to have you with us. These webinars are monthly events from the Night Sky Network, and we'll put some links for more information about the Night Sky Network and the Astronomical Society of the Pacific in the chat momentarily. But before we introduce our speakers, here's Dave Prosper with just a couple of announcements.
Hi, all. I just wanted to thank everyone for your patience during yesterday's maintenance on the Night Sky Network website. And if you didn't notice, even better. I just want to say JPL-IT did a magnificent job porting the site over to a new host environment and doing some security updates. So give the technical folks a round of applause. They do tons of work behind the scenes. And of course, it's the kind of work that you only notice when something goes wrong. And in this case, something went very right. And hooray. And if there's any lingering issues, just let us know, or just other things you might notice at nightskyinfo.astrosociety.org. We also have an announcement from NASA who need more people to stream the eclipse. And you can live strip the May 15th lunar eclipse on NASA TV. So where will you be on the night of May 15th? Would you like to share your views of the lunar eclipse with viewers around the world? NASA TV will be incorporating views of the eclipse from around the country and is looking for amateur astronomers to send them live views from their telescopes or video cameras, including against interesting backgrounds. So the eclipse will be low in the sky for most, so get creative with local, non-commercial landmarks. And if you or someone you know is interested, please find more information and apply at the link in the chat, which is in here and in the chat. There we go. And I put that on YouTube too. And one last one. It's the last couple of weeks to order outreach pins if you haven't yet. They're still available for clubs to order, and the rest will ship in April. You can find more details and qualifications at bit.ly/NSNpins2021. Those links are also in your newsletter, and they will be in the chat momentarily. And that's it from me. Brian, on with the show.
All right, thanks, Dave. For those of you on Zoom, you can find the chat window and the Q&A window at a link at the bottom edge of your Zoom window on your desktop. Please feel free to greet each other in the chat window, making sure to select everyone and not just the host and panelists. Also in the chat, let us know if you're having any technical difficulties, or you can also send us an email at nightskyinfo@astrosociety.org. If you have a question for our speakers, please put it into the Q&A window. That helps us keep track of them and they don't get lost. So I'm going to start the extra recording here. Welcome again to the March webinar of the NASA Night Sky Network. This month, we welcome Dr. Denise Smith and Holly Ryer to our webinar. Both Denise Smith and Holly Ryer are from the Space Telescope Science Institute, where Dr. Smith is the deputy head for the Office of Public Outreach. Holly Ryer is the senior educational specialist. Both have a long history of developing and delivering opportunities for public engagement with imagery and discoveries from the Hubble Space Telescope and now the Webb Space Telescope. Please welcome Denise Smith and Holly Ryer.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so let's get ourselves, whoops, there we go. Bear with us just a minute. We're getting our slides to cooperate. There we go. Thank you so much, Holly.
They're perfect. Thank you.
So as we get started, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here today with you to speak with you about the Webb Space Telescope community events. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge the team. We have a number of team members at NASA who are working with us on this initiative. And I also want to express Anita Dey's regrets. She was planning to be here tonight with all of us and was not feeling well. So I am pinch hitting for Anita this evening. Also working with us at NASA headquarters, Kristen Erickson, Peter Suey, Stanley Brown, and a number of very talented team members are working with us from the Space Telescope Science Institute as well. In addition to Holly, we're also delighted to have Christopher Britt working with us, Alexandra Lockwood, Emma Marcucci, Jasenia Perez, and in May, you're going to be hearing from Kelly Lipo. So I hope and I think that you are all just as excited about Webb as Holly and I are, and we are so excited that you're participating in this webinar tonight to learn more about the Webb community events. As I have come to learn with time, the amateur astronomy community plays an amazing role in inspiring local communities. You all have a tremendous enthusiasm for astronomy and for engaging your local communities. So this evening, we want to give you a little background information on the initiative, talk about how to get involved, let you know about some of the support materials and resources that are available to organizations and communities participating in the Webb community events. And of course, also give you a sense of what to expect next. And we'll talk about questions that you may have, and then of course, wrap up for the evening. Next slide, please. So as Brian mentioned, as we go through the webinar this evening, if you have questions, please put them into the Zoom Q&A section. And we also have an evaluation for you for this webinar. And the link will be circulated to you afterwards through the Night Sky Network communications. And we also will have it in the chat for you this evening. So let's go to the next slide. So just a little bit of background information about Webb. As you've been hearing, Webb launched from French Guiana on December 25th and is now fully deployed and at L2. Webb is an infrared space telescope studying the universe using infrared wavelengths of light. And Webb is going to be exploring every phase of cosmic history, from the first galaxies to our solar system. And Webb is going to help us better understand the universe by collecting both images and spectroscopic data. And as I mentioned, in May, Dr. Kelly Lipo is going to be joining you to give you more in-depth insights into Webb science. And in the meantime, I also want to encourage you to check out the NASA website and the STSCI website with the links shown on this slide, where you can explore more. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So as we thought about the launch commissioning of the Webb Space Telescope and the first images, we thought this was a really important and exciting opportunity to create and nurture generations of science enthusiasts, including audiences who typically may not see themselves as part of science, underserved audiences. And our vision is to do this through long-term, meaningful engagement with Webb's discoveries. We aim to use Webb's scientific discoveries to make science accessible to all, with an emphasis on underserved communities. We aim to share the value of scientific discovery with images and other data in a way that inspires curiosity about the universe. And we aim to use Webb's discoveries to help people experience the joy, the beauty, and the power of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in their lives. Next slide, please. And we want to give you a sense of the breadth of events that were held in association with the launch of Webb. So this map illustrates the events that were held. And we were illustrating both the in-person events, virtual events, and some organizations held both virtual and in-person events. There were over 450 sites that participated in this initial phase of community events. And we hope to have many, many more participating in events associated with the first images. Let's go to the next slide, please. So those more than 450 sites held over 600 events across the nation around the time of Webb's launch. So those events were held between September and December of 2021. And as I mentioned, we're aiming to organize additional events around the time of Webb's first images. And the opportunity to hold events is open to both formal and informal learning venues, community centers, a wide range of organizations serving the public. And as with the launch and commissioning events, there will be a range of event types and sizes, ranging from in-person, virtual, and hybrid events. So our team to support these events is providing a number of resources, including trainings, points of contact, an outreach slide deck to help people, support people in presentations. We are also providing access to experts, and that includes all of you, members of the Night Sky Network, sharing what you love about astronomy and the knowledge that you have. We also provide some handouts and event materials, activities, and digital resources. Next slide, please. So as I was mentioning, we very much aim to reach audiences that we haven't been able to reach before. We aim to engage people who aren't already NASA fans, who don't follow Astronomy Picture of the Day, or who may not think that NASA and science is for them. So expanding to that non-choir audience. We've also done some initial work with the Girl Scouts. We have been talking with historically Black colleges and universities, some minority serving colleges and universities. And we're also looking at areas where we have geographic gaps. For the launch and commissioning events, we noticed we didn't have as many organizations participating as we may have anticipated in Washington, DC and in Montana. And we've done some additional outreach in those areas for the events that we hope to have around the time of the first images. We are also really working to tap into our existing connections, including wonderful networks such as the Night Sky Network. And as we try to expand the reach of this initiative and engage as many people across the US as we can, we're also very much trying to remain realistic about what we can achieve, because this really is intended to be a long-term endeavor, reaching beyond launch commissioning and these first images. Next slide, please. Excuse me, my spring allergies are already kicking in. So I think as people were signing on this evening, there were some questions about how will we know if we have applied to be a community event host? How will we know if we've been selected? And I'm happy to share that event hosts will be notified by March 25th. So very soon you will be hearing from NASA about your application. In terms of the time frame for the events, we're anticipating that the first images will be released in July. and that events will be held between the day of the release and into October of 2022. We're encouraging organizations to build their events around interactive subject matter expert panels. We're planning to organize 4 to 6 virtual interactive panels over the summer, including the day of the release of the first images and the following weekend. Events will also be supported with recorded panels and pre-recorded Q&As. And when events are happening, we're also looking to Night Sky Network members such as yourselves to provide assistance as in-person experts or virtual experts. And one of the things that we've learned through the evaluation of the initial events that were hosted for Webb launch is that having an outside expert present at the events, whether it's virtually or in person, has really helped the host organizations increase the success of their event and increased the engagement for attendees. So we are very excited to be able to collaborate with all of you for that reason, for your passion, your enthusiasm, and the difference that we know that you will make with host sites. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And here, Holly, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Denise. So now here's another very important question everyone might have for the evening, and that is about how to get involved. Oh, I jumped a little too quick there. Okay, so if you applied to host your own event and you get your notification on March 25th, then obviously you would be involved by hosting your own event. But another way you might think about wanting to be involved in this, just in case there are some of you online tonight that did not maybe apply, or maybe you're thinking this is something I think I'd like to get involved in, but I don't want to, do the logistics of planning my own event, then what we would encourage you to do is maybe look for those people in your area that you already partner with, or those people who might be hosting events, to see if you could support their events and get involved. And by the end of March, we'll have a map available that you can find like who in your area is having those events that you can collaborate with. But I would also say that even if you're having your own event, it's still really helpful to still collaborate with other sites in your area that are having events as well. I did see some people in the chat tonight who said, oh, we did a launch event and we worked with a library in our area, which is fantastic. And I know that I was a point of contact for a few of those venues that were doing those events in the fall. And I saw a similar thing happening in Georgia, where we had a local astronomy group that was partnering with a library in their area. And it really made the event better for everyone, not just for the participants, but also for both of the venues, because the people who went to the library event got to learn about the astronomy club, which was new information for them. And then they also were able to get access to a scientific speaker that was presenting for the astronomy club. And that talk was streamed in virtually to the library. So it allowed the people in the community to get access to that resource without them having to travel outside of their, their neighborhoods in their immediate area. And it also, provided some extra PR for the astronomy club as well. So partner up with each other and, share your resources and help each other out. I mean, that's, the way to do it. We also saw a lot of venues who were requesting things like, can you send us a telescope, or can my speaker bring a telescope? And they're very interested in night sky observing opportunities. And what I did for a few of my venues is I said, it sounds like you want to reach out to an astronomy club. in your area. So let me point you to this website. It's called the Night Sky Network. And I had a few venues come back and say to me, oh, I've never heard of that before. This is great. I said, if you go to the Night Sky Network, you can find an astronomy club in your area to reach out to. Because of COVID, we can't promise you what they can do, but that's the place to go. And it sounds like that's what you're looking for. And then whether you're supporting another event in your area or whether you're doing your own event, we're definitely looking for you to be that in-person or that virtual expert that helps provide that human connection for the participants of the event. And, this could be you're just facilitating conversations maybe about telescopes and different kinds of telescopes. Webb is really interesting because it has an open design. And so that's very unique compared to what most people think about when they think about telescopes. A lot of people, we've seen them come to us with questions about how do I do an event around the first images if I don't know what the first images are? Well, you could talk about how astronomical images are produced. For those of you who are into astrophotography, explaining to people how that photon becomes an image, can provide a really unique experience that can have a connection to Webb's first images. And let's see here. And what I did here was just put in a few key dates that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, but this is just to remind people that Webb will do solar system science. So there are some night sky events that are coming up through the summer and the fall that you might want to just think about in relation to how to make those connections to JWST. July 13th is a date that is close to when first images will come out, but it's when there's a full moon. So that's a good night for looking at the moon, but probably not good for looking at a whole lot of other things. So I would say July 28th is an even better date because there's a new moon, which means dark skies. And I think that's also around the time that a meteor shower is happening. Then there's a couple of dates related to when we have some of those gas giants that will be at opposition. And Webb will study those gas giants and their rings and their moons, and Webb will also study the Kuiper belt. So this is a way you can think about taking things that you're probably already doing anyway, and then making those connections to Webb science. And then, as Denise mentioned, we will have support materials and resources available to you to support your events and also help you make those connections. And one of the key resources will be this. Now, what you see here is a slide deck that some of you might already be familiar with. We created this for the launch events in the fall. We will be providing an updated version of this for the first images events. And what's really great about the slide deck is that it will be available in both English and Spanish for those of you who might be looking for materials in other languages. And for those of you who are hosting events, there will be an opportunity for you to put in a request for handouts, and we will be providing a preset bundle of handouts to all event hosts. And then we will have other activities and resources available. And we have a whole, lots and lots of different things that are available from NASA, also available from NASA's Universe of Learning, because this is a partnership there. And one of the things I want to point out is that URL that's right down at the bottom of the slide. This is like the one place where you can go to kind of find where all of these things are. And what we're showing here to you here now is just a few key examples. Sometimes if you might be doing indoor activities for some reason, so some of these things might be helpful to you if you're doing indoor activities. Like over here in the upper corner is a great origami paper activity for making a JWST mirror that involves a really easy to download and print template. And then some of you might be familiar with the NASA Eyes online modules. The one that's featured here is Eyes on Exoplanets. So if you're doing something that's indoors and you're looking for a demonstration tool to visually show exoplanets, that's a good resource for that. In the middle is NASA's JWST STEM Toolkit. This is a great resource for going online and finding everything related to JWST that's organized not just by topic and theme, but also for grade level. So if you're working with like young learners and families and you're looking to find things for certain age groups, that's a good place to look. This is also a great follow-up resource. I know sometimes astronomy clubs like to do star parties, and then they're always looking to give attendees other things to do at home. Like here's more resources, here's a way to stay engaged at home. So this is a good resource for that as well. And then we also have activity guides available for other hands-on experiences and demonstrations. And then we also have various other multimedia resources, online interactives available from Viewspace, which also does have really great videos. And one of those examples of those videos is over here to the right. There's a lot of different videos available about JWST, but I wanted to highlight this one tonight, just in case this is something new to some of you. This is a video that's a part of Viewspace. It's called Tonight Sky. And this is like a month-by-month video series that highlights the month's constellations, deep sky objects, and also makes connections to those things that you will see in the night sky, and then how that relates to NASA space missions. So if you're looking for like a way to help make those connections to what people see in the night sky and how that relates to space telescopes, this is a good resource that can help you do that. And then in the middle is just, this is a flyer we have for the Webb AR app. What's really great with this is it's got a little QR code on it, and then you can just use your phone and you can put JWST kind of anywhere you are in your surroundings. And then last but not least, we do have posters and printables that you can find and online. And then with that, I will turn it back over to Denise, who will tell us about what we can expect next.
Thank you, Holly. So next slide, please. So coming up, we will have Dr. Kelly Lipo attending a Night Sky Network Telecom, so that you can hear more about Webb and its deployments, Webb's instruments, the science that we're anticipating, and what we'll learn from those scientific observations. So I encourage all of you to pencil May 19th into your calendars to save that date where you'll be able to hear more. And let's go ahead to the next slide. And in terms of the timeline, what's happening next? As I mentioned, March 25th, we'll be notifying hosts about their selection. And roughly about that same time, we will be providing a map of all the hosts who signed up. And we will be sharing that so you can see who is planning an event near you. And we encourage you to reach out to those organizations to see if they could use your support. And of course, some of you may also be acting as host sites, which is very exciting. In the April to May timeframe, we're going to be holding some additional training sessions for host sites and for speakers. And in early July, we anticipate that the first images will be released, and then we will be seeing community events throughout the summer and into October of 2022. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I think we have some time for some questions.
And we do have a number of questions, and I'm going to bring Holly up here too, so that we can have both of you up here in case. So we'll just start at the top. And so Ira was asking, our club just learned about this event. Does that mean we can't participate in this? With the due date being the 25th, is that's only 10 days away.
Right, so it is not too late to participate. And I would encourage you to reach out to Anita Dey. We'll make sure that you have her email. And I would encourage you to contact Anita, let her know that you just learned about this initiative and that you're interested in participating.
In a similar question, Irene said she's not yet applied to host the event, but would work with a university if possible. Is it too late for them to apply it as a partnership, or any hints that they might have for having a joint partnership with somebody?
Right. So there again, I would encourage you to get in touch with Anita, and we can see if Ohio University had put in an application, and if not, Anita can advise you on the potential of working with Ohio University Zanesville on an event for your community.
Okay, Roberto in Puerto Rico says that there'll be, with a lot of Spanish language folks when they do this. And so, maybe you could elaborate on some of the Spanish language resources that are available.
So Holly, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can answer that one. Actually, if you go to webbtelescope.org, at some point when I've stopped sharing my screen, I'll try to drop that link into the chat for you. There is a whole page there that's called Recursos en Español, Resources in Spanish. And if you go there, that's a good spot where you can find like everything that we have on our outreach site for Webb, that's all in Spanish in one page. And then there's also some Spanish resources available from NASA as well. I want to say it's Ciencia de la NASA is, I think, the SMD site that has NASA resources in Spanish.
Okay, so here's one from Lisa, Deep Space. Would there be any opportunity to implement items for accessibility, such as 3D printed tactiles, data sonification for various BVI, DHH, ADA, ASD audiences?
So there are some existing resources available for blind and visually impaired audiences. There's for the first images themselves, it will take time for us to provide some of the additional resources for the blind and visually impaired community that we hope to and intend to provide. So while they may not be available on the day itself of that the first images are released, stay tuned for those resources with time.
Okay, and then we've got one from Nicholas. Will the first images taken this year be available immediately for us to download and process, or will they be under a year-long restriction?
That is a great question. And I saw a related question in the chat about whether, in general, whether data from Webb would be available immediately or whether one would have to wait for the 1-year proprietary period as we've done with Hubble. So Webb data does have a proprietary period. Because of the nature of the mission, the scientific community worked together on a really interesting initiative called the Early Release Science Observations. And those are observations that are going to be taken over the first 5 months of Webb's science operations. And those observations are going to be made available very quickly. So I encourage you to stay tuned for the early release science observations, and we'll have to follow up with you on your question about whether the very first images that are released are immediately available, because I'm not certain if they fall within that category of early release science or if they fall within the category of observations that have a longer proprietary period.
All right. So Al asks, notes that there are a lot of resources in your slide deck and is wondering if the slide deck will be available. And a lot of clubs like to use these for, images and the slides for at their meetings and board meetings to get their clubs really on board.
So yes, the slides, we can make the slides available to you. And as we go forward, when that outreach presentation is available, that will also be a resource for you.
Okay, so David asks, our college subscribes to Viewspace. Is it possible to download a couple of their short programs to include in an online event?
So I'm going to put, or Holly, could you put Tim's contact information in the chat? Tim Rue is an education specialist at the Space Telescope Science Institute and works very closely with the Viewspace program. So I would encourage you to reach out to Tim, tell him you attended the Night Sky Network webinar this evening, and let him know what you would like to do, and he'll be able to assist you with that question.
Okay, so Robert's got a question here. And actually, I think, Holly, you put that into the Q&A and it might have only gone to the person who posed the question. If you wouldn't mind putting that into the chat in case other people have a similar need, that would be great. Robert asks, he understands that JWST will look in the infrared. So as it looks back in time, will it see different kinds of features of objects at different redshifts? That might be one more for Kelly in 2 months, but we've got the question now. So.
Yeah. So, and I'm grinning because this is one of the things that is so exciting to the scientific community. As you've mentioned, as Webb peers out into the universe, Webb is looking back in time, helping us look back in time and probe farther and farther back into the history of the universe. So this is where it gets really exciting, because we will start to see and learn more about, for example, how galaxies build up over time. And we are seeing different episodes in the history of star formation, galaxy formation, and the overall history of the universe. So, this is just such an exciting time for the scientific community and for astronomers, because we're going to be seeing new things, discovering new things, seeing things we didn't anticipate seeing. So Kelly, as Brian was mentioning, will go into more detail into some of the scientific explorations, including as we probe further and further into the universe. That's going to be a very exciting time.
Okay, William's got a really great question here, and he says, is there any particular age range that they should use for these presentations? Is the material suitable for children, teens, or is it more geared towards adults?
So Holly, would you like to comment on that one? Because I know the team has also been thinking about ways to support the community and adapting for different audiences.
I would say it's all of the above. So we have resources that fit a range of ages, from like paper pencil activities that are simple, like make and takes that really young, like 7-8-year-olds could do, to things that are more like for middle schoolers and high schoolers, like how to control robotic telescope and, take your own images and process your own images, or how to do like coding activities, to, like the outreach slide deck that could be used if you're interested in doing a talk for adult audiences. So it's Yeah, it's everything there, and it's just a matter of like what audience you're looking to target and what topics you're looking to do. But if there's something specific you're looking for a certain audience, please reach out to us. And if it's not obvious and you can't find it, then we'll help you find it.
And speaking of resources, Don just came in with a question, and will the resources provided for our programs evolve with the course of Webb's mission, or will the current resources be constant for the duration?
Okay, that's a very good question. So if you go to the community events page, there is a list of resources there that does get updated periodically. I wouldn't say that changes a lot, but one of the resources you do see that they point you to is to the webbtelescope.org website. And there's new things that are getting added to that website all the time. And especially when the first images come out, there will be web pages that are dedicated to that, where you can find those images. There will be a big news release, image downloads, and we're always making new science articles and infographics all the time. So, and I would say, yeah, just keep looking, or like I said, just come to us if you're looking for something specific and can't find it.
So David's got a good question, and I think a lot of people would be interested in this. Is NASA going to create some specific images for Zoom backgrounds from some of the JWST first images that they could potentially use for virtual events, so that they could have one behind them?
That is a great question and a great idea. We'll have to ask NASA. I don't know the answer to that one.
I know last week or last month, we had a guy who was talking about the Psyche mission. And so we loaded up a bunch of Zoom backgrounds that they had made for the Psyche mission. And so all of us had our Psyche backgrounds for that. And it brings a little bit of more interest to, I think, to the presentation.
Definitely.
The Psyche folks had artists create them, and so they had like a competition every year. It was really fun.
Holly, why don't you go ahead and stop sharing? I think that we've seen the word question a little bit long enough here. So Lisa asks that she notes that she participated in I guess the WGBH PBS NOVA exoplanet lab. Are you going to be able to provide some content so that they can develop creative content and lesson plans for exoplanet and NOVA digital media through some partnership collaborations? I know that NOVA's frequently has had a lot of really great resources, and there's been a lot of good partnerships between NASA and WGBH. And I know a couple of years ago, we did a couple of webinars with them having to do with their black hole apocalypse film that came out. And so any thoughts about collaborations with them? Or maybe that's something that she needs to take up with Anita.
So what I can say is that we have worked with GBH in the past to support them in creating educational materials. There's a number, as you all know, the images from Hubble, for example, are publicly available, and many organizations incorporate them into a variety of products. So I imagine that there will be content that is incorporated into GBH activities, and that's certainly a very interesting collaboration for the future.
Okay, Roberto's got another question. He said, are the images that are going to be released, are they just images that are kind of put up that are previous, or are we actually going to be able to see these live as they come in?
Sorry, I'm just trying to think how to best answer that question. So we do sometimes have Well, sorry, I believe there is going to be a live broadcast. That's a little different. If you're trying to ask if we can watch images immediately appear from the telescope, we won't be watching them that way. The images will have been downloaded from the telescope and processed and then released to the public. So I hope that answered your question, but if not, perhaps we can follow up offline.
Well, I could, kind of, one of the things that's interesting is a lot of people have misconceptions that, that our astronomers are going to be interacting with out there. A lot of people have misconceptions about where these images come from. Do they come in instantly? Do they, is it like looking through a telescope and you just snap a photo as you look through the telescope? But that's not how these images are created, are they?
No, it's not how they're created. It's very different than when we go out to our backyard telescopes and look through our telescopes visually. So first of all, there's the light that is coming into the James Webb Space Telescope and making its way to the scientific instruments. And the light being received by the detectors and measured by the detectors in those instruments. And then that data is transmitted back down to Earth and received by our ground stations, transmitted to the Space Telescope Science Institute, and processed by computers. So there's some very interesting tutorials about this process that we can probably point you to offline after this evening. But it is a very different process than going out and looking through our telescopes, as Brian alluded to.
I know for me, I think a lot of times, and I do a lot of work with teachers, and a lot of times, how do you work with the students to understand this? You bring out the pretty pictures, but in a lot of ways, how those pictures are brought about with the instruments is just as fascinating or a more wonderful phenomenon than what is actually in the pictures themselves. And so for me, it's, how did you get that picture? That's a pretty great thing to know about. So.
Yeah, and sort of related to this topic, one of the activities that our team is involved with is something called the Astrophoto Challenge. And there are going to be some upcoming trainings on that activity. And that is an activity that I think would also be of interest to this community and to some of your audiences. And that will help you and your audiences have a deeper understanding of exactly what Brian is talking about. Because in that activity, you have the choice of working with either data from online robotic telescopes or actual FITS files from NASA missions such as Hubble and Spitzer and Chandra. And down the road, when we have the Webb data, we'll be incorporating Webb into that activity as well. But that activity gives you an opportunity to work with the data, either from an online robotic telescope or from NASA's great observatories and ground-based telescopes, and create your own color images, and your audiences can create their own color images. So that gives everyone a lot more insight into the fact that the light from these astronomical objects is being registered as data, as this string of ones and zeros. And part of our job as scientists and what many of you do when you download data and work with it yourselves is translating that data, which appears as a grayscale image, translating that into the beautiful colors that you see behind Holly and myself this evening.
Yeah.
And Holly, thanks for putting the link in the chat.
And speaking of all the links, Mary notes, can all the websites mentioned be sent to us by email? I know they've been typing into the Q&A. We actually have a better way. I think that David will probably, if you could collect all these and put them into the outreach resource page on the NSN website. And so maybe if you could pop that link into there, and we will make an effort to get all of those links that were mentioned into that page so that you can get at all those resources. So Dave, did you hear? All right, William asked another question. Will data from Webb be transmitted via laser or more traditional means be used?
So it is not by laser.
The traditional ways, that's on
Yeah.
radio waves. Let's see, we've got data transfer things. Okay, Stuart asks, what's the data transfer rate for each sector being investigated? And this, bears on, how well you can do these things live too. That kind of, I think that's a constraint on the ability to do these live. What data transfer rate for each sector? How many instruments are used to analyze the sector of interest?
So I didn't actually encourage us to save some of these questions for the science presentation coming up in May. And we will get these to Kelly ahead of time so that she can be prepared to answer them.
Great. And Mary asked, can we please put down again the contacts at Space Telescope, and so that they can reach out, and their title, what their function is, and what it is, who it is that you suggested that people reach out to. Because there were a couple of times that there was a specific person that you suggested that they reach out to. And I don't think we want to put their names and email addresses on our website, but I think it's okay to put it in the chat. And I think and Vivian, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and come on up and say that we're getting close to the end here, and we don't currently have any open questions. And so why don't you, I'm going to remove all the spotlights.
I just wanted to let clubs know that if you're regularly logging events on the Night Sky Network, and you have logged, I think, 2 events in the last quarter, that we do have available some web goodies, another 15 sets or so from the launch, that have a lot of great materials if you want to hand those out to the public as you start doing outreach again. Many of you are getting started again with public engagement, and we're really glad. You need, yeah, sorry. Dave reminds me that it's reporting your events. So make sure you report your events. And if you do, you should see on the right-hand side a link to, what does it say? Request outreach handouts. Those are free, and we'll send those off to you as long as we have any in stock. So I put the link in the chat. Thanks to everybody who keeps asking for those.
All right, not seeing any more questions showing up, and so I just want to, remind everyone that the 2 people that Denise and Holly suggested you contact, they put their contact information in the chat, and Dave is going to, at some point in the next few days, take all the links that were suggested and try to load those into the outreach resource page. And Dave, if you happen to have the link for the outreach resource page that goes along with this, and it will also include, you could watch the video there, or you could watch it on our YouTube channel to go back and refresh your memory about what that looks like. So. Okay, so here it is.
And I just added Anita's title in there too, and she will be delighted to speak with you about participating in events.
Okay. And this actually might be a question that, it's, I guess it's a science question. But a lot of the science questions, people are not going to know. And one of the things when Hubble did the deep field and everyone kind of had the sense of, how much of the sky, well, Al's asking because JWST's shield must remain oriented to the sun. How much of the sky can JWST actually analyze, maybe with one single image, but, over the course of a year, how much will it see?
And give me just a moment because we have a wonderful video and I'm just trying to find, there we go. I just wanted to find the link for you. We have a wonderful video called "Which Parts of the Sky Can the Webb Telescope See?" So I'd like to encourage you to take a look at that. If I could just get myself over to the chat window here. This is a video that's on our webbtelescope.org site. And when you watch the video, you'll see that Webb is able to see a surprisingly large fraction of the sky, perhaps more than you might have anticipated. And I'm not going to give away the answer tonight. I'm going to encourage you to watch the video.
That's everyone's homework. You have to watch the video.
So here we're going to make this the last question. And so we have somebody who has a library with a makerspace that they're serving students in grades 9 through 12. And they're doing this through accessibility with all through STEAM, through art. And I know that there is a wonderful art connection packet that I don't know whether who it was at NASA produced it. It might have come out of JPL. Any thoughts to being, incorporating some of the art aspects into this so that people can really integrate this with some of these visually thinking strategies and also, bringing more people in to experience it through art?
I'm really glad you asked that question because there is a lot of interest in art within the Webb outreach activities. And there is an initiative that was organized by our colleagues at the Goddard Space Flight Center around JWST, James Webb Space Telescope, and art. And for those of you who are on Instagram, you'll frequently see posts where people have been creating JWST art related to Webb and submitting those. So art is certainly, and STEAM is certainly something that can be incorporated into these events. And some of those resources will be on that resource page that Holly's been mentioning. Holly, is there anything you want to add about that?
No, just exactly what you said. I'm thinking of like so many different things that I can point people to. So what I'm going to do is actually drop my email in here. So that way you can follow up with me because it will be easier if people have questions like that. If you follow up with me by email, then I'm happy to respond to you and then point you to all those things that can help you do that.
All right, well, that pretty much takes care of our questions. And I just want to note that John did note that question that we had about communication and data transfer is really important. They get asked it a lot. And so if we could make sure that Kelly knows that that is, and there, and we'll try to save it someplace for Kelly. So. And that's,
Yes.
that's
And
all for
Brian, if we could get the,
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, Brian, if we could get the list of questions from you
Mhm.
later, we'll make sure we get that one in
Okay,
particular to
yes.
Kelly.
I will make sure you get that.
Thank you.
And that's all for tonight. Thank you, Denise and Holly, for joining us this evening. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and all those really great questions. Join us for our next webinar sometime in April. We're not quite sure when. We're going to be greeting Colby Ostberg from University of California at Riverside, who is working on some of the upcoming Venus probe. And so she's going to share with us a little bit about that. You'll be able to find an archive of this webinar and many others on the Night Sky Network website in the Outreach Resources section, as well as the Night Sky Network YouTube channel. So keep looking up, and we will see you next month. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much, Denise, for pinch hitting for Anita.
Happy to do it.
And
It was
Holly
fun to
just
talk
here.
with everyone.
We didn't get a chance to adequately thank her, but